Perfect.
Well, that didn't take very long. We spent a lot of Tuesday's edition of Only Weird Games talking about the possibility of a Trent McDuffie trade to the Los Angeles Rams. And now here on the Thursday edition of Only Weird Games, we can talk about it all show long. Yes, Trent McDuffie has reunited with Rams passing game coordinator and defensive backs coach Jimmy Lake, who is at Washington with McDuffie.
I have no idea what today's about to bring. I wonder if any Super Bowl champion has ever benched their left tackle in 2 different games in the same season.
Everywhere.
Lights come on. I need to see it, Omar.
Someone
Show
is
it to
getting
me.
snaps.
Show it.
Jazz and I have been married for 17 years.
So, Nate, what did you think about...
They call it a blockbuster, and I think when there's an all-pro player and a first-round pick involved, I think that might be fair. Trent McDuffie, no, it's not official yet, because none of the league years even gotten here yet, folks, but for all intents and purposes, Trent McDuffie is a member of the Los Angeles Rams. The Kansas City Chiefs now in possession of an extra first-round pick, an extra 5th and 6th round pick this year, and a 2027 third-rounder from the Los Angeles Rams. And we're just going to get right into it, guys, because we previewed how we might feel if this day came 48 hours ago. Now that we are here, Nate Taylor, what surprised you about the McDuffie trade that happened yesterday, and how did it hit you when the news first trickled onto your phone?
Yeah, so the first reaction I had was, and again, I'm aware of these things before they become public, is we're doing this now? We're doing this today? You know, I want to remind people, I think, if my memory is correct, I think the Tyreek Hill trade, and we might reference that a number of times today because of the similarities. The Tyreek Hill trade was during the first week of free agency. And so getting ahead of this before the new league year starts was a little bit of a surprise, to be honest, because I was like, you know, if you're watching, I'm just like, we're doing this now? Mm-hmm. Like, we're doing this now. Mm-hmm. Now, with all the Jimmy Lake of it, what I didn't tell you, gentlemen, and what I didn't tell the audience was that, you know, because Trent McDuffie's from the Los Angeles, Southern California area, I had already known that he was in Los Angeles, Southern California area, back in his hometown. So one of the best parts of all of this is understanding, okay, and I know, Seth, you're going to love this. There really wasn't that much posturing, and there really wasn't that much like, tell me what the phrase is again, sir?
Positional bargaining.
Ah, yes.
I have thoughts on it if anyone's interested.
Yes, there really wasn't that much positional bargaining, which was like kind of surprising. You know, I know my friend and buddy Sam McDowell was the one who reported, because I even asked it on air, like I guess within like an hour, less than an hour of the trade, like essentially being done. I was on with 96.5 The Fan with Cody and Alex, and I said, who I asked publicly, who are the Rams bidding against? It's hilarious that it was the Giants, and even then I was like, the Giants were a ploy because Trent McDuffie was never playing for the Giants. Much in the same way, I believe that Tyreek Hill was never playing for the Jets. So everybody did their role, everybody did their part, and I put it on Twitter yesterday. I thought the biggest surprise was that the Chiefs actually got 4 picks for a player that you knew you had to pay top of market, or reset the market, I should say, for a premium position for a guy who is 25 and is obviously at the peak of his, athletic ability. But giving that much picks up, knowing you have to fulfill the other side of it, it tells you, A, how much the Rams really, really, really wanted Trent McDuffie, how much Trent McDuffie really, really, really wanted to be a Los Angeles Ram, and that the Chiefs were able to benefit in a way that I couldn't have anticipated, on this show 2 days ago.
Seth, we'll get into kind of the minutia of it here and go a few layers deep as we go. But again, we just talked about this on Tuesday. At some point, you had talked or written about kind of the Godfather offer you'd want to hold out on for this deal. So when the news hit your phone, what was the first reaction for you?
The first reaction for me was not about the return or anything like that, but it was really, man, we really are turning a page on an era in Chiefs football. And that's something we talked about a little bit with Mike Dana being cut, right? And this is what happens when you are exiting, or maybe you're still in the middle of, but you had just one down year, the most successful time period in your franchise. And it's not even close. And you're exiting a certain era of that success. It's weird seeing guys that were such a big part of such instrumental moments in Chiefs history leave. You kind of think of those guys as like lifers, especially like a guy like McDuffie, who called a foundational player multiple times, and I think he is.
Better for you to just ignore them. They've got information that you're not going to retain anyway, so I wouldn't even sweat.
Also,
it's just for the viewers.
Also, what if I could report, hypothetically, theoretically, that maybe Trent McDuffie and Jimmy Lake were able to reconnect yesterday?
I'm very happy for them.
Now, who is that?
Is. Yeah.
Oh, Jimmy Lake, the one-time recruiter / DB coach at Washington, who just so happens, Josh, to be the secondary coach who will, usher in Trent McDuffie in the Los Angeles Rams locker room, also working under the always wonderful Sean McVay.
So,
did you know that this is Trent McDuffie's hometown, Josh, that he's going to play for his hometown team? In fact, at one point in time, just less than a year ago, on a whimsical question from a child, Trent McDuffie said, if there was anyone I would want to play for that wasn't the red and gold of your Kansas City Chiefs, it would be my hometown Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, he's about to set the top of the market with what they traded for him. They have to, they have to get a deal done this year, because otherwise you have the Orlando Brown Jr. problem, only more so because they traded even more.
Or the Chris Jones problem of it all. Right.
And so they're going to have to top of the market. That's what's going to happen. So I just thought about that. Like, it's an interesting thing. Like, Trent McDuffie made so many plays on so many playoff runs. And we talked about this on Tuesday. Watch the 2022 film of the defense before McDuffie came back from injury, because he got injured in week 1. And I remember watching his film from week 1 and being like, holy smokes. Like, he's like really good, like really good. Like, not like Jalen Watson walked onto the field and was competent from the minute he stepped on the field, which is incredible for a 5th round pick. But like, Trent McDuffie stepped on the field, is like, oh, he's like a really good corner. Like, day one. That was awesome to see. And you watch that week 1 film, and I was like, he's going to be really good. And then he came back, and the 2022 defense, low key, was not very good. Trent McDuffie comes back. They got better, significantly better. And because of everything that went down with Patrick Mahomes' ankle, I think they probably still beat the Jags and probably still win the Super Bowl regardless, because, I mean, the way Mahomes played in the Super Bowl was unbelievable. I don't think they beat the Bengals without the defense being what it was in 22, and the defense isn't what it was in 22 without Trent McDuffie. They certainly don't win the Super Bowl in 2023 without that defense being as great as it was, and McDuffie was like, him and Snead like fought all year for the second best player on the defense that year in 2023. Like, they were both just so good. And he, through all that, in 4 years, I'll say it this way, in 4 years, Trent McDuffie had more of an on-field impact in the Chiefs dynasty than Tyreek Hill. That's incredible. Doing that in 4 years. And Hill is, maybe more likely to be a Hall of Famer, all that stuff, whatever. But Trent McDuffie, there's no repeat without Trent McDuffie in almost certainty. In that 2023, go turn on the 2023 film. I mean, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, I know everyone talks about them differently now, but in 2023, both of them were They were at the height of their powers. They were the Avengers. And Deebo Samuel got put in a torture chamber by Trent McDuffie. And so did Brandon Ayuk. If you go back and look at like the big plays they made that day, they were all against zone. When Spags was like, I'm going to send 5 and play man, and your 2 all-pro level guys aren't going to get open, and you're not going to know what to do because Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed are going to lock those guys down. And I mean, he knocked it. He defended. He had like 4 passes knocked down in the Super Bowl, including
and they
one.
Were all critical moments of the game too.
Yeah, absolutely critical moments. He had 2 signature plays from that game. The one he knocked down the field against Deebo Samuel in the end zone. Gorgeous play. You cannot play corner better than that. And then obviously the Spags blitz to force a field goal that led to Mahomes being able to force overtime. It was a great call by Spags, but it was also set up by the fact that McDuffie saw that there was going to be a delay and actually backed off before the snap. And Brock Purdy never saw him coming. Their protection didn't. They had it won, and him being such a smart player made sure that it stayed one, and he also knocked the pass down because in theory, someone could have been open there.
Someone was open.
That's true. Great legacy as a player. And I had someone ask me like, well, does he really have a Chiefs legacy? Cause like it's only 4 years, he was never the best corner in the league the whole time. Absolutely. And that's what happens when you have a legendary team is that you get legends from that era. And so that was the first thing I actually thought about was it was like, oh man, he's actually going to, not be a Chief anymore. And that's really a bummer. I really thought, and it doesn't hit like the same way it did with some certain players, but like I really thought Trent McDuffie was a 10-year guy. And that's going to be weird seeing him elsewhere.
Well, Josh, in the era that we all were brought up in the NFL, he is a 10-year guy. And I think that's what is hard for people to reconcile with is that like traditionally he is a first-round pick. Again, I've said this before. He is the highest pick Brett Veach ever made, and he was great on day one, like on opening day. To Seth's point, he was great, and he only got better. And in a lot of ways, he was Johnny on the spot, whether he was forcing fumbles, the Tyreek Hill play in Frankfurt, or he was Johnny on the spot when L'Jarius Sneed makes a game-saving play. And I think people forget this. Like, hey, L'Jarius Sneed made this incredible play to strip the ball from Zay Flowers right before he crosses the end zone, before he crosses the goal line. And Johnny on the spot is Trent McDuffie, who's aware enough to know that he should be the one to dive for the ball faster than Zay Flowers' teammate, who's also in the end zone. So there are several moments that we could point to. I think he is supposed to be a 10-year guy. The issue is this is both philosophical and this is also a function of supply and demand. There's not a big supply right now of great cornerbacks, so the demand is very high for the Rams to. And we projected this on Tuesday. Shout out to Jimmy Lake, as always, that they were going to maximize as much as they could for Matthew Stafford. And if you're a fan of football, you want to see that. Like, I don't care if you're a Chiefs fan or if you're just a general NFL fan, you want to see teams go for it. And this is definitely a go for it move. At the same time, Josh, what is Trent McDuffie supposed to do? there's literally nothing I don't think he could have done differently in these 4 years. And I want fans to be acknowledged or acknowledge that too, that Trent McDuffie got such a reaction upon his exit yesterday. I don't think I've seen that since I've been covering the team for a guy, to Seth's point, who's only been on the team for 4 years.
There's an element to it that I hadn't really thought of and haven't mentioned it this way, but this is usually kind of a pejorative. It's a little bit of a Madden trade in kind of a positive way because, to your point of, well, you draft this guy in the first round, then you get incredible production on his rookie contract, but before he gets a lot of money, you say, okay, last year of team control, we're going to trade you for a first and some other stuff because in this little Madden 08 loophole I have, I can just move a safety to slot corner and they're a 98. Like it doesn't work like that in real life, but this little glitch here, I can always I can draft 5th round safeties and move them to slot corners, and then they're 95s, and we're gonna be okay. Even if McDuffie was a 99, I'm gonna get a 92 out of my 6th round pick here.
Right.
That's a little bit of the philosophy that the Chiefs have kind of told you time and time again they're going to rely on, and it has worked. That's scary. That's not something you want to put all of your eggs into that basket of just, we'll just coach them up and figure it out. Because I think 90% of the time that teams do that, it backfires. They go, no, we're just so good at identifying talent and developing it that we don't need stars. We just need guys in our coaching staff. But I can't think of, I'm sure there are other things, other position groups for other teams that would have a real argument. But off the top of my head, I cannot think of anyone that would have more clout in that regard than Steve Spagnuolo and Dave Merritt developing cornerbacks. Like, it's just been as successful as you could possibly imagine. So my knee-jerk reaction in the first report I saw was, McDuffie in a package including 29 overall. And I thought, well, God, that might be, maybe the Chiefs are sending back a 4 and getting back a 6. And, what's the actual landing spot going to be? Because I had kind of, my absolute hope of hopes would have been 13 overall. I never thought that was going to happen. I thought, well, 29 plus something would at least feel okay in terms of what you're getting in return. But I'd kind of lowered my expectations to like, okay, Chiefs get 29 and send back a next year's 4th or something like that. That would have really, I just wouldn't have had as much air in my sails for that. Ultimately, all the details come out, and I'm conflicted because the Chiefs are worse today than they were yesterday. The Chiefs are losing a great player, one of 2 blue chip defenders, and as I've said on multiple occasions, the only blue chip defender whose age starts with a 2. Like, this is an incredibly important part of this defense over this last era of Chiefs football. And also, they got as much in return for him as they ever could have asked for. This isn't the Joe Tooney deal where it's an older guard, so the return is disappointing, or the L'Jarius Sneed deal where the return's disappointing because you're worried about the knee and the market is a little bit strange and the circumstances are slightly different. Yep. Ultimately, again, I'm conflicted because the Chiefs are losing a great football player. The Rams should be excited because they're getting a great football player. To your point about like what else could McDuffie have done, I'm happy for him that he is going to the Rams and not the Titans. I'm glad for him not to just double down on the Sneed thing, but like I'm glad that he's not just going, or Mike Borgonzi still loves me, and that he's going to go toil there. Like he's going home to I think now the Super Bowl favorite Los Angeles Rams. So I really do think it's essentially a win for everybody. I do think the way the Chiefs got here is still open for critique, which we'll do. I know Seth's already written about that element of it a little bit. But Seth, before we even get to that part, because you just talked about McDuffie, the player, does the return feel sufficient to you? I would probably say this isn't quite the Godfather offer that you were hoping to manifest. I think that might have been a little richer for me. But I look at this saying that's fair market value for Trent McDuffie, who now is going to make a market-setting deal with the Rams.
I remember when we talked on Tuesday, I was saying, 29th doesn't quite move me. And I was like, that's not like the whole offer. You can't refuse. And I think what I had said, and I'm trying to remember, it was some, I'd have to have someone play it back for me. It was some iteration of like a 1st and a 3rd, right? Well, a 1st and a 3rd and a 5th and a 6th. That to me is, I wouldn't quite call it a Godfather offer. I agree, but it's really darn close. Like had I gotten the phone call and had that offered to me with the Chiefs not sending any picks back,
correct,
I would have said yes to that fairly quickly. Especially knowing in terms of locker room impact, you're going to be sending away a happy player who's glad to be going home. That matters. Like these guys, you got to remember, these guys are colleagues. They're coworkers.
Yes.
He is going to, Pat's going to be like, oh man, dang, but he's going to be on the phone with Trent, and Trent's going to be like, hey, man, they called me. They let me know. They did it right.
Former coach Jimmy Lake is here actually, which no one's talking
former
about.
Former coach is here.
I've got relationships.
And then also, they're going to pay me.
Also former teammate Puka Nacua.
Yeah. That's so cool. But like he's gonna be telling him, like that stuff does matter. in terms of the locker room aspect of things when it's like kind of a beloved teammate. Like,
Yeah.
and it does matter that you have developed guys really well. So all that matters. The return to me, given after 2023, I'd have been like, maybe you could have gotten a little more, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
But seeing that there's a limitation to what he can do as a boundary guy and as a shadow guy, I'm really happy with it. People will look at the Sauce Gardner trade. That was not a good trade.
Terrible.
Right.
That's
on the
and
day
it was different.
Right.
Yes.
On the day it happened, I kept looking at my phone and being like,
Right.
that's a typo. That can't be
that's-
2 first-round picks, too.
And that's a guy that was just extended. And I wrote about this in the Chief North newsletter. He had just gotten that offseason a new contract that included, like, I think it was a $13 million, a little over signing bonus. What that means is the team trading for him, that's non-existent.
Right.
So
The Jets paid
imagine-
that. That is paid money from the New York
Yeah, the Jets have
Correct.
paid that, which means it's not, because for the Jets for the next 4 years, that's an extra $3 or $4 million against the salary cap, depending on how it got divvied up. You don't have to do that. You save money there. So that's one reason why I really think like guys with like 2 years left on their deal, like good veterans, that to me, provided they're not asking for an immediate contract when you trade for them, that's a market inefficiency. Like, and this would never happen, but like Max Crosby's contract is super duper affordable for who he is. Jonathan Greenard out of Minnesota. Now I've heard whispers that he wants a new deal. His deal is super affordable because you are in a situation where the signing bonuses have been paid out already. Some of the cap hit stuff doesn't affect you the same way. So that's what made Sauce Gardner. He's also a guy who does play boundary at a higher level. And
it has the
can shadow.
prototypical stuff that made him get drafted higher. I mean, I think one of the lab guys mentioned this last night. The league's always viewed him differently.
Right. And so that's why you're going to get a little more. If Trent McDuffie had just been signed to a contract that made him infinitely more affordable rather than having to take the top off the market, they probably would have gotten a little more for him. That's just the way it works. The return is really good. It is so easy to be like, oh, they have 9 picks now. Like adding the 5th and the 6th, I get it. There's value there because they need. Well, you know what? Let me put it this way. We said that the Chiefs have a problem in that they need some blue chip guys, at least 1 or 2 blue chip guys. Well, not at least. They need at least 1 more blue chip guy. Could really use 2 more, and 3 is obviously gravy. But they also need more depth. They need more purple chips. They need more red chips. By getting that 5th round pick, that 6th round pick, that gives you some shots at a few red chips. And they've traditionally been able to accomplish that a little bit. So I love it. I love that it adds flexibility to them to where now they can, if they want to do a little trading, they can. They've got more space. They've got more. And I know this is like now you talk really fondly about the player, and then you look at what's next. They went from having a very narrow window of success, in my opinion, for this offseason to where now they really can finagle this correctly because of the combination of cap space. Now you've opened up another hole. That's a problem.
Yep.
But you've now got a sufficient amount of cap space, even without getting too crazy, which I do think they should be pretty aggressive in free agency, but be that as it may, to where you can be aggressive in free agency and you've got a lot of room to play around in the draft. And you've got some trade compensation to fiddle around with if that's, maybe the Jets, maybe the Jets franchise tag Breece Hall because they think someone will trade for him. And you can say to them, look, you guys are going to stink this year. We'll give you a 5th round pick. You wanted a 3rd last year. We'll give you a 5th now. I'm not saying that's good team building. I'm just saying there's options here. You can afford to
I keep mentioning Kayvon Thibodeau. Now, you have more chips depending on, you just wait the Giants out on their price for him. And then if you've got an extra 5th now, you can toss that in the Giants' direction. When you don't have enough picks, you don't even have all of your own picks, which again, you got to remember the Chiefs were missing their own final 2 picks of the draft. It was Peyton Hendershot and Cam Thomas. I had to look it up again recently. I don't think it was Cam Thomas. Or it was Uche. Is it Uche in?
Yeah, I think it was Josh Uche. Yeah.
Fine. It doesn't matter.
But like, snaps Uche.
Yeah. And that's how I learned that Peyton Hendershot hit the requirements to get that pick over to Dallas. They do need, not that all of those guys are going to turn into Jalen Watson or even, Josh Williams was a higher draft pick. Isaiah Pacheco. Those are all players. Like Mike Dana also as a 5th round pick is a good line for this. He is a delight on a rookie contract, and then when you have to pay him the free agent money you would pay him once he hit free agency, it's a little bit bloated. You've got to find those guys in the 2nd and 3rd day of the draft to fill out the roster that way, and then you can afford to be top heavy again, which they were for a long time. So I think it's fascinating in a number of ways. It's going to change how we talk about the draft going forward. I do want to talk, we'll hit some free agency stuff, but first let's take our break. When we come back, I want to talk to you guys specifically now about where this leaves the rest of the secondary, because I don't know if Jalen Watson's future changes. Brian Cook, we've talked a lot about his market materializing. Well, right now, this isn't even a joke. Right now, we're looking at a Chiefs secondary returning with its only major piece from last year being Shamari Connor. I mean, there are other guys who played last year, but if you're talking about the frontline players in the secondary, right now, there's a chance that almost all of those faces are different. We'll talk about what the Chiefs should do and could do after the break.
I'm BJ Kissel, founder and CEO of KC Sports Network. Emprise Bank has been with us from the beginning. They were our first network partner, and they believed in the vision of what we were building from the start. I can't speak to any other banks or companies and how they operate, but I can tell you from personal experience and based on the growth of the network you're listening to right now, that if you have banking needs, call our friends at Emprise Bank. We've worked with so many great people there over the years, from Vicky and Aggie to Andrea, Lori, Jackie, Deb, and Aaron, and not to mention so many others that not just supported KC Sports Network, but supported our KCSN Foundation as well. But the best thing that I know is that if I have a question or a problem, no matter how dumb the question is, I know who I'm going to call and who I'm going to talk to, and I know that I'm getting an answer from someone that I can trust, and I know that person is there to help us. That's why Emprise Bank has always been and continues to be our partner in Possible, and they can be yours too. You just have to reach out. If you have a banking need, whether it's business or personal, hit me up. I will connect you directly with the same people that have helped us build KCSN, and that's our friends at Emprise Bank.
So even with the injuries late last year and obviously not much to play for late in the season, only 4 Chiefs defensive backs played more than half of the defensive snaps last year. Shamari Connor played 98% of them. Jalen Watson played a little over 83, Brian Cook a little over 82, Trent McDuffie a little over 66, and then you get Noah Williams and Jaden Hicks, who had their numbers obviously kind of reinflate out of necessity later on in the year. They're on the other side of that 50% cutoff. So, Nate, I think that we had been trending in a direction that Brian Cook's market was going to be really hard for the Chiefs to stick around in. I'm still not sure I would want to be at the very top of the market for Brian Cook, but I also don't know if Steve Spagnuolo is comfortable going in the next offseason with his only familiar faces being Shamari Connor, Jaden Hicks, Noah Williams, maybe Christian Fulton. So where does this leave them now? Do you think this changes the math on the secondary?
Unfortunately, I don't. Now, I think for Brian Cook specifically, it'd be hard, and I understand this, not every offseason is the same, but it would be hard to say, okay, on one end, we're not going to retain Justin Reed, but in the next offseason, we're going to retain Brian Cook. I don't, as of this point right now, it'd be hard to see that scenario. I know there was a report this morning, I believe, from Mike Garafolo that, hey, now after trading Trent McDuffie, does Jalen Watson become back into the mix? And that's possible. But there's this stat that really jumped out to me. And this is from like our own ESPN research department. I think there were some people on Twitter who also caught wind of this as well. In the Brett Veach era, which is 2017, post-draft, the Chiefs have never given a DB who was drafted by them a second contract. So if Jalen Watson can somehow, I believe as a 7th round pick, break the odds, God bless him. I understand Seth's point that at this time, given you are less than a week away from legitimate free agency, you're 4 days away from being legally tampered with.
This is a point that I made in the group text, so you should probably fill in our reading.
Nope. I don't do that. I just tell people what has already been known to be fact without them understanding the context within that.
You guys, just so everyone else knows, you can't tell reporters anything.
Wow.
No, that's not true. There's so much that I want to share that I am not privy to.
As long as it's not about me, I think you should go for it. If it is about me, I think you should keep it to yourself.
Oh, well, okay, sure. Based on the text lore that is our group chat. Seth made the argument that Jalen Watson should see what his actual value is on the market. As a 7th round pick, I would also advise him to go ahead and do that. Now the scheme has to fit. You have to be good about what your prospects are. Hey, if it's and I think even this is understandable for most teams. Like, hey, if we're trying to retain our own players, is $2 million between the offers that big of a difference? What are some ways that we can make it appealing to you, that it might not be the top market, but obviously we're in the same range because you understand you would like to continue to work with us. We would like to continue to work for you. That's something that could really, I think, legitimately happen for Leo Chenal. Hey, Leo Chenal could get a quote unquote better deal on the open market, but Leo understands that like he really fits everything that Steve Spagnuolo wants to do in Kansas City. Therefore, as long as the deal is relatively close, he might come back. I don't know if that's going to be the same with Jalen Watson. Two things here. On one hand, the reason why you make this trade is because your general manager has never given out a second contract, and you will continue, to Josh's point, do the Madden thing where you just draft, you develop, you have one of the best secondary coaches in all of the league, and you have one of the greatest defensive coordinators, if not the greatest defensive coordinator we've ever seen, considering I always want to say like Bill Belichick is like one of the greatest defensive coordinators of all time. He also had Lawrence Taylor. Like that matters, So now, to be fair, Michael Strahan's a very good player. Chris Jones, obviously a great player. Both those guys should be in the Hall of Fame, But to my point, one of the greatest defensive coordinators of all time. We cannot argue this. So if you're trying to both get more picks at a more controlled cost, it doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense to bring back Jalen Watson. But hey, if you guys figure that out, cool. Because we could always draft someone below the Mason-Dixie line in, say, the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. Which is why the Trent McDuffie of it all was so fascinating, because they took us off the scent. It was so great. And the best corner they've ever taken was not below the Mason-Dixie line, which is a hard L for me.
Couldn't get further north unless it was Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. I mean, you can't get much more northern than that.
Lost. Look, I have been cultivating that belief my entire time, only for them to be like, "But Nate, what if we found like a truly great quarterback?"
He's an outlier. Our rule stands. Not
above the Mason-Dixie line, to the west of it too. So hilarious. The other thing too, if you're in the camp that says, hey guys, I really like Jalen Watson. He's only gotten better over time. He fits the scheme. He makes us, he gives us another strength. He actually closes some of that hole of Trent McDuffie's absence. Hey, I completely understand you. I completely, in a lot of ways, agree with you. But you got to get something to get something, boys. You got to give it to get it. And I've seen too many people say, well, Nate, there's no way they could restructure that Chris Jones contract. There's no way. Simply no way. Even though if you restructure it, that legitimately gives you the biggest salary cap savings you could make as of right now, given all the moves you've already done, to indicate you're stepping towards that a little bit more. So, hey, if you want Jalen Watson, that's fine. But Chris Jones ain't going nowhere. And not only that, you got to restructure him because you've already done it with your other players who are capable of being restructured. You can also include if we want to get real semantically, we could do Creed Humphrey. Hell, we could probably even do Trey Smith if we really wanted to.
Creed and Karlaftis are the two that make the most sense for me based on what their future contracts are and their current age.
They might want to do Karlaftis in 27 to extend their window in 27. Just, again, apples to oranges. Choose your own adventure.
I've been told it all rolls over and that I should just be happy with cap space, but
you really should. But Chris Jones could be restructured, and one could argue should be restructured if you want your team to try to maximize this 2026 offseason window and be legitimate players in the offseason, and if, I don't know, your general manager's already on record saying we have a chance to be $60 million under the cap when free agency starts, guess how you do that? You gotta restructure Chris Jones's contract to really make that happen. So if you want your team to go for it, if you want Jalen Watson back, that's one way of giving yourself a little bit more flexibility while also trying to still be in the market at other positions post this, seismic trade that they made yesterday.
That's not a lever that I would pull for that exact outcome. And Seth, you've already talked some about not wanting to restructure the Jones contract. You've written about it. People can go back and read or listen to that if they want. But what about Jalen Watson? And what about specifically who does remain in the cornerback room? Noah Williams and Christian Fulton, who right now has a $13 million cap hit. They'd only free up $5 million in cap space if they cut him. 8 of that, it would be dead money.
Ooh.
Considering the types of players that those guys are, is that not a bit of redundancy with the style that Jalen Watson plays with?
It is. And that's where, to me, like, I can understand why they maybe don't trust Fulton to stay healthy, and they've got some concerns there. It would be weird, depending on what they can retain Watson for, to pay him and not McDuffie because of the overlap in traits. So, like, Watson, if he comes back, will play 100% of the snaps, but you still need a slot corner, right?
Right.
McDuffie, if he comes back, will play 100% of the snaps, and you don't need a slot corner. So, like, you're done, right? So that's worth something. Whereas it just depends on what they think of Christian Fulton, which is really tough to say. But it's also like, okay, if it was an injury thing a lot of last year, can you trust him to be healthy this year? He looked competent down the stretch. He looked like a guy you can play, but and he can play well. So I think, to me, though, if you don't think you can trust him, and because of that you got to bring back Jalen Watson, then just eat the dead money, call it a failed experiment, and save the $5 million, because $5 million does matter, especially, we talked about this before, especially in the first year of that contract. $5 million can
Clark Hunt want $8 million on the books, not being used for this year's football team.
And that
might have $13 million on the books not being used for this football team, depending on how compared to how last year went with Christian Fulton.
Right. And that's, I don't know, but I don't care. And so, like, I like to talk about what the Chiefs should do, and that's rarely going to ever, take into account, like, well, what would Clark's pocket look like? I don't care.
That's rarely you commenting on what Mark Donovan should do in a given week. It's more reach oriented than
So the long and short of it, look, should Clark Hunt worry about his billfold? Sure. I'm not one to pocket watch, right? That's your money. You do whatever the crap you want with it. But if I'm
no one uses those anymore anyway.
If I'm
your money, but it's my football team.
Well, it's just like, if I'm talking about what the Chiefs should do, I'm not going to be like, oh, but then, my cash budget, like, I don't care about that. And that's like, because that to me, like, it's one thing to be cognizant of the salary cap. To be cognizant of cap spending is to be looking at an entirely separate issue that I don't care about. And now that's where you talk about what the Chiefs are more likely to do, but I don't care. Like, I don't, it's like, oh no, they were only this much of a profit this year instead of that much of a profit. I get why Clark Hunt would care about that. You're a businessman. You care about that. Be my guest. But when I talk about what the Chiefs should do, I'm not going to talk about that. So that to me is, if you're going to keep Fulton, or if you're going to bring back Watson, I think you cut loose Fulton, because I get, and cornerback depth does matter, but they've been generally able to bring along guys. I am curious what they think of Chris Roland Wallace. I think that becomes really, really important. He was starting to get a few more snaps in the slot, but not really enough to really know. And plus, they were playing him at safety. Well, they played Jamar Connor in the slot. It was like Spags was trying to kill me. Like, I don't know if I've ever felt more personally attacked than by that decision when McDuffie was hurt and they were giving him safety snaps, and he did pretty well with them. But I was just like, but why? Like, why would you do that? It's like,
why?
You know what we could do? We can play Chris Roland Wallace as a 2 high safety. And I'm like, yes, But you know who else you could play as a 2 high safety? Chamari Connor. And then you don't have to play him in the slot. Guys? Anyone? Like,
I cannot wait for the opening media voluntary offseason practice to text you, hey, bud, guess where number 27's lining up on day one of OTAs.
I am going to, if they keep up with that garbage, I'm going to start tweeting fire spags constantly because it costs them games this year.
Right.
In a year you went 6-11. It's cute and funny when you're winning Super Bowls. When you're 6-11 and you've got the worst third down defense in the NFL, it's suddenly not cute or funny anymore. So like that, I'm gonna take a breath because it's fine.
Thank you.
It's probably fine. But that really is one of those things that, like, golly, I got sidetracked thinking of how angry it made me. So the secondary is, you let Cook and Watson walk, it's definitely a depleted secondary, and you have to bring in someone in free agency. You basically have to, because you can't walk into the draft. Traditionally, I know the Chiefs haven't wanted to walk into the draft with glaring weaknesses anywhere. And then yet somehow they managed it with, well, no, because they signed, that's why they signed Jalen Moore to a big contract, is they didn't want to have to sign, or they didn't want to need Josh Simmons to drop to where he did. It just happened, and it all worked out wonderfully. But they definitely, I would try to bring back one of the two. I would. But if you bring back Watson, I think you move on from Fulton.
Since you're already riled up, can I just ask you, we didn't really get it before the break, but the couple of things that led to this offseason where the Chiefs have prioritized different players in different ways, we talked a ton about the Nick Bolton contract because it matters that you only have so much money. We talked a ton about George Karlaftis and Trey Smith, the other deals that they've given out of real consequence. And you didn't spend as much time on it in the story, but I do still think it's worth mentioning Chris Jones, just because, like, if they would have decided, hey, we're going to go with the younger slot corner as the foundational piece instead of the older defensive tackle, they could have done that. I don't think they made a mistake that way. But like there are huge decisions that impact when you're in a hard cap sport. You only have so much money to spread around. I know, again, you revisited that in the story, Seth. Who from that group, which of those contracts do you look back at now and think either, man, we knew at the time that was kind of what cost him here, or are you able to say, you know what, that money's fine, and they got the return for McDuffie. They weren't getting that return, I don't think, for George Karlaftis, probably.
Right. You're not going to get that return for Karlaftis. You're not going to get that return for Nick Bolton. You're not going to get anything close to it. Even
they did
like
pay those guys to keep them around.
Yep.
Right.
And that's where, and then the argument is, well, none of them, would have been top of the market or as much money as McDuffie. Yep. But none of them are nearly as good as McDuffie either. And Trey Smith might be a comparable player to McDuffie, but he's a guard. And they also had Joe Thuney. This is where the thing gets weird for me in terms of finding like a consistency to it. And we talked about this Tuesday. I don't understand the thought process of paying Trey Smith and trading away Joe Thuney because Tooney's older, and then paying Chris Jones and trading away Trent McDuffie because he's younger. I'm just like, pick your ageism, man. Like,
no, it's not. It's not ageism. It's legit. I think it's legitimately philosophical. And one of the things that I didn't get to earlier is, if they were ever going to pay a cornerback, guys, he wears number 22 for you. Like, it's just, I think that's like the harshest thing I could say, and sort of the unnervingness of, like, again, as I looked on my phone yesterday and caught wind of all this, like, wow, we're really doing this today, is, and again, this is partly reaction from players and understanding their views and thoughts and feelings on this. He's as good of a cornerback as they might ever have in the Patrick Mahomes era. And they chose to not prioritize and pay this man over George Karlaftis, over Trey Smith. Chris Jones did make a little bit of it difficult for them because of the timelines didn't line up the way that the team wanted to, for understandable reasons. Guys, if they can't pay Trent McDuffie, they've made that choice. And understandably, it has worked out for them time and time again. But if you're not going to pay Trent McDuffie, who in the hell are you going to pay at cornerback? And I think that's something that's underlining the Jalen Watson of it all. Is like, I mean, sure, they could retain Jalen Watson. I have no reason to believe they will, because it's just not what they do. The last defensive back they gave a second or third contract, originally starting his career at Kansas City, was Eric Berry.
Yeah.
So this is not about a youth over veteran status. This is, again, philosophically what they have chosen to do that is in alignment with both general manager, head coach, defensive coordinator, ownership, and hell, let's bring in another core 9 member, team president. That's the choice they've made, because you can't find that many better cornerbacks than McDuffie right now in the NFL, and he's younger than most of them. So when it comes to Joe Thuney, it was they chose not to pay him because they were worried about injuries starting to pile up for him, with the understanding that like Trey Smith is younger, and you know that's an investment that they've made.
Which
because
one of them played every snap last season? I can't remember.
He was very close. Now,
yeah, the older guy. Huh.
That's a calculation. That's a calculated risk that they made. And you know they because he was also on the last year of his contract.
My ball says that this one will be injured more. You know what? I'm being a schmuck. I'm sorry, Nate.
I mean, but
schmuck's the wrong word. I got a lot of other words you're being. But schmuck isn't what I was gonna say.
It's completely fair, because I remember that one of the reasons why they traded Tyreek Hill is because, well, he can't be this fast forever. Guys, he was still fast for the next 2.5 years for the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
So you make decisions based on projecting things out, and like no one's going to be 100%, but also, hey, we think Trey Smith can continue to ascend, and largely so, totally fair. Where we think Joe Thuney is he's plateaued, and it'll only get worse.
Yeah, he is
He's
plateaued as the very best pass blocking guard in the NFL by a wide margin. Who
is the best guard in my lifetime?
What you're gonna do about the fact that Patrick Mahomes is plateaued as the greatest quarterback we've ever seen? It's like I don't think you're ascending, and I'm not engaging in good faith right now.
No, I know, but that's what makes it.
It's a podcast. You don't have to. It's okay.
Ooh,
yeah,
sweet.
But that's what makes it fun, because I can give the reason why the team made that decision, and also, did you see him last year? That's why he won the inaugural, and honestly, they should just scrap the name. The Joe Thuney Award for Protector of the Year. The annual Joe Thuney Award for, man, this guy is a robot. I remember talking to Robert Mays, not to go on a little bit of a tangent, but I remember talking to one of my best friends, Robert Mays, obviously host of the NFL, the Athletics NFL show. And of course, lovable Chicago Bears fan, grew up in Chicago. And guys, I wish we could have recorded. I should have taken out my phone and just recorded our like 5-minute just love of like, I told you, right? I told you. You already knew, but he's so good. It's like, oh my God, man. Like just the way we talk about Joe Thuney is just so funny that honestly, I would like to make a request to Roger Goodell that we name the award after him, because he was the original award winner, and no one will ever come close to him as the protector of all quarterbacks. So yeah, but for Trent McDuffie, like that's gotta be harsh too, because dude, I'm a 2-time All-Pro. I am honestly the best nickel slot corner in the league, if you want to call it that. I made Jamar Chase crash out in front of everybody in your own conference, and okay, y'all just not going. Okay, that's philosophically what you've chosen to do. We understand it, and we just have to live with the results of like, okay, until they show you something differently, you really shouldn't believe them when it comes to like, well, we value cornerbacks and premium positions and like, retaining those guys, because clearly they're in the vantage point and the philosophical point of everything starts at the trenches. That's why we paid Chris Jones when we paid him. That's why we paid George Karlaftis when we paid him. That's why, wink, wink.
The famously productive Chiefs pass rush of 2025.
We got it. We got it. He's so good at it, y'all. That's why we gotta hit this in free agency, and we gotta hit it in the draft, because we are philosophically and inside out when it comes to our defensive philosophies. And it would be really nice if we had a mind frayer too. To
Yeah,
get everybody
speaking of
lined
the
up, of course.
speaking of the philosophies, that's one thing I just wanted to mention. Like we don't need to spend the rest of the show here. I want to get your guys' pre-free agency thoughts too. But this is already true even with McDuffie and the $13 million cap hit. The second largest defensive cap hit this year belongs to Nick Bolton. Like, if you talk about the philosophical side of it all, just like dead seriously, engaging in good faith here. Nick Bolton's cap hit this year is over $19 million. If your argument for giving him that deal was that he is a force multiplier, that he is the quarterback of your defense, that he knows everything Spags wants, he makes everyone around him better, this is the year that gets tested. The previous years, that's not been a test for Nick Bolton. It's been, hey, be that guy in a good system while you're on a rookie contract. Last year's cap hit was still nice and low. This is the equivalent of that first year when a quarterback's contract kicks in, and suddenly you're not able to pay the receivers that have helped him get to that point, and you say, okay, quarterback we just gave this extension to, are you Patrick Mahomes or are you Tua Tagovailoa? Because you are about to lose weapons and still have to produce. Nick Bolton has one guy in the front line ahead of him for all the trench investment. Like, Chris Jones is he is the son of this defense, and he's making the moon in salary. You've paid Karlaftis to try to give you that stabilizing force there, but two real unknowns still, even if Omar and Ashton Gelati step right in, you're expecting a lot from them. This is a year where, hey, Nick, you not only are the brain of the defense, now you're also the brain of your second year weak side linebacker and a new Sam. Like, you are shuffling this around because you might not have Leo or Drew Tranquil this year. Right. Do you have enough brains for the entire unit?
I was about to say, hey, Jeffrey Bossa, you better be in his shadow at all times.
Which is a problem because Jeffrey Bossa is faster than Nick Bolton, so he should actually be in front of Nick Bolton's shadow.
Well, he probably doesn't know where to line up because he doesn't even know he's allowed to play. So that's tough. You know, it's like, hey, Jeffrey, you ready to go? If only there was a way for us to know. Beans.
Also,
I don't know why I've become such a sourpuss in the second half of the show.
Hey, Drew. Hey, put Jackie on the phone real quick. Jackie, how many kids y'all got?
We can't let you talk about Drew Tranquil's wife again. There's a rule in the bylaws of this show.
No. I just want Jackie on the phone. Hey, Jackie, how you doing?
Let's take a break.
Bro?
Oh, God, we already did take a break? Oh, no.
How many kids y'all got? You like living here, right? It's great, ain't it? It's great. You know, the kids are doing well in school. Drew's a great guy. What I need you to do, Jackie, is to tell this man it's worth the cost of your happiness to get a little bit under what we need you to get under so that you guys can get another golden season in Kansas City. We know Drew gonna be training. We know he gonna take care of you. He gonna take care of the kids. You know, we're looking out for you in a way that perhaps we might not be looking out for, like, the majestic white horse on a sandy beach. But for you, we're calling you, okay? We're calling you, Jackie. And Jackie, think about the kids and get Drew to understand that, like, another year with us is another year happiness for you, okay? Do you think you can get him to do that? When can we meet? Let's take you guys out to dinner. I don't know if you guys heard about this, but there's this restaurant called 1587. We would love to just take you guys out on the town. We'll definitely provide babysitting. You know that. You know, our report card is only going to get better, Jackie, if you just stay here in Kansas City with us.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to work or not. Seth, with free agency just around the corner, give me the name or position group that you're the most excited or convinced by right now that we're going to be talking about in a few days from now.
All right. As I breathe.
But you need more time to come up with this thought?
No. If I had my druthers, I would love to see the Chiefs address running back and defensive line. I think that's pretty much everyone, right? They would love to see some moves made there. The thing is, you know, running back, I would love to see them grab Walker or ETN, or, I mean, there's a couple of other competent guys there that, like, you know, everyone's kind of falls in love with, like, their specific choice this time of year, right? Mm-hmm. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you end up with, Dowdle, you will not believe. I've looked at Dowdle a little bit. He'll look so much better than they did last year. Like, and people might be underwhelmed by that, but he would look so much better in this offense than what they had last year. But I would love to see Walker or ETN. I mean, those would be great. I just want to see them add some explosion and consistency to their, to their backfield. They have to do it. I think there's a couple of different routes that they could go on defensive line. I would not hate the idea. John Franklin Myers is a guy out of Denver who I really liked. He might get a little overpaid based on the fact that he's coming out of such a great defense.
Welcome to free agency. Overpay me.
Right. And that's just it. Like, to me, I think what you try to do is have it to where you don't have such glaring holes. They were rumored to be interested in Boye Mafe. I would also
Boye, by the way.
Boye, sorry.
No, you said Boye, and the Nate corrected the wrong one. You said Mafe. It's Boye Mafe, but Nate corrected the one that you said correctly, I believe.
I thought he
pronounced
said Boye.
Jimmy Lake.
I thought he said Boye like he was a vibe.
Well, you might have said Boye Mafe. You might have said Boye Mafe. That's
Boye
possible.
Mafe.
So I think there's multiple places you can go on defensive line, and because if you get a guy from the interior, that can only help. I'm curious what Ashton Gelati looks like in year 2. People often forget about guys in year 2. I think Gelati was okay year 1.
He was
like
good for a rookie. Yeah.
I think because of the way we grade things out, I don't think people think about him the same way they thought about Mike Dana in year 1.
Mm-hmm.
But he was about to that level of play, and so it's like, okay, and he's got better athletic traits to trend up. So I'm curious about that, but I would really like to see them grab a running back. Like, that to me is basically a requirement. And so you address that. The wide receiver room, if they go wide receiver, which I don't think they do, I really think that that's what that 9th pick is for. If it's not going to be defensive lineman, I like Carnell Tate so much. I think the way he wins is like built for the modern NFL.
Can you do the Lemon and Tate film reviews right now? Can you just text those to me tonight? I'd like both of those on my desk by tomorrow.
I got to do the free agency. If I were Brett Veach, that really snuck up on me. I've got a jury trial Monday, so I'm not going to be like following anything. Thanks a lot for committing first-degree burglary, dude. Anyway,
he could have just been playing this cool new app I just heard about, where if you play a lot of the games, you don't have to burglarize anybody. Just
running back in defensive line. If they go wide receiver, I think he might end up getting overpaid, but I think Juwan Jennings would be a lot of fun and would play a ton of snaps and would provide you with a guy who can line up anywhere and not provide tips as to what you're doing when he's on the field.
You're saying he's not going to be Juju Smith-Schuster in year 8?
Yeah. I appreciate the
very
comment.
funny
He's innocent
comment
as it
here.
stands. I watched the man on body camera flee and break into someone's. I've watched him do it. Oh, this is not okay.
How was his 40? How was his explosion?
Right. How
Did he have to get through contact at some point?
Long strike?
Dude could
Burner?
run.
Dude's
If he
a
wasn't
burner?
so bad at hide and seek, he would have actually gotten away. He was walking away from law enforcement. So
High and tight with whatever he stole. I mean, again, like you thinking X slot running back, Louis Rees-Zammit kind of type.
Thank you, Alex. Allegedly, I watched him allegedly run on body camera that allegedly exists.
I love that somebody already said, "Hey, bro, that's AI. That ain't even real."
That's
Yeah, that could be AI.
real,
That
bro.
could be AI.
Trade a second-round pick for Brian Thomas Jr., draft Bain, and then use that 29th pick on, let's say Sadiq is going
This
to
guy.
drop that far. This guy. But anyway, so those are my free agent thoughts. I got dragged too far afield, and now I'm just worried that I said way too much about other stuff.
Well, we'll find out on Tuesday, I suppose. Nate, you've already given some subliminal messaging to the chat today. In 60 seconds or less, anything that fans ought to keep in mind as we roll into free agency, legal tampering and whatnot.
Yeah, I think, I've written about it, and I thought Seth did a great job despite the circumstances of what he's going through right now. The last thing I will say too is, like, if the moment is right and things have to line up, okay, I know most people will say, okay, defensive line likely means edge rusher. Not so fast, my friends. Could be defensive tackle if certain things line up a certain way. So I just want to keep people aware of that. It's D-line specific.
Derek Nottie and Mike Pennell are free agents.
Oh, thank you. Obviously, Omar Norman Lott's coming off of ACL. It's unfortunate, but like, if you want better production from the defensive line, you also have to think about the interior just as much as you have to think about the edge. Just something to keep in mind as we're going to chat on Tuesday. We will obviously have news by then, but do want people to be mindful of that as well.
Yeah. All right, Seth's got to go. Get us out of here. Shout out Jimmy Lake.
Okay. Yeah, guys, I'm a professional.
Nope, take a part of the logo. Quick, fade away. Shoot a 3.
I'm
Here, how about this comment from Jake Dennis from earlier? You said, you can tell reporters your birthday and they won't make it public.
That is true. That is true.